Amina was a young girl who lived in a small village with her stepmother, Ngozi. After her father passed away, her whole life changed. She remembered the days when her father used to smile at her, buy her little gifts, and hold her hand as they walked to the market. But those days were gone, and all that was left was the memory of his gentle voice. When her father died, Amina had hoped that her stepmother would treat her with love. She thought maybe in time, Ngozi would see her as part of the family. But from the very beginning, it was clear that things would not be that way. Ngozi had 2 children of her own, and she gave them the best of everything. They wore clean clothes, ate the largest portions of food, and played happily in the compound while Amina worked. Every morning before the sun even rose, Amina was called out of bed. She was told to sweep the compound, fetch water from the well, and prepare the fire for cooking. When the sun climbed high in the sky, she washed clothes, scrubbed the floors, and helped prepare meals that she would barely taste. While Ngozi's children ate from full plates, Amina received only the smallest portion, often the scraps that no one else wanted. Still, Amina kept quiet. She obeyed every command, even when her hands ached from work or her stomach growled from hunger. She had no one to defend her, no father to shield her, and no relatives who cared enough to visit. Sometimes, when the night grew silent, she sat by the window and whispered to herself, wondering if her mother, who had died when she was very young, could see her from heaven. The villagers often noticed how Amina was treated. Some shook their heads in pity, but none of them interfered. They whispered among themselves, saying, "That poor girl works like a servant in her own father's house." Children in the neighborhood sometimes mocked her, pointing out her torn clothes or the way she rushed to the well with heavy buckets. Yet even then, Amina kept her head low and her heart calm. Inside her, a small fire of hope burned. She dreamed of a better life, though she did not know how it would come. Sometimes, as she carried water on her head, she imagined herself in a classroom, holding books instead of buckets. She longed to wear a clean school uniform and learn how to read stories, just like she saw other children do. But each time she returned home and saw the pile of chores waiting for her, she realized those dreams were far away. Despite her pain, Amina carried herself with quiet strength. When Ngozi scolded her harshly, she did not answer back. When the other children laughed at her, she did not fight them. Instead, she found small ways to comfort herself. She hummed little songs while washing clothes, or she picked wildflowers by the roadside and tucked them behind her ear. These little acts gave her a feeling of peace, reminding her that even in sadness, beauty still existed. One evening, after a long day of work, Amina sat outside and watched the sky. The sun was setting, painting the clouds in shades of red and gold. For a moment, she felt as though the world was speaking to her, telling her that her story was not over. She whispered softly, "One day my life will change." Ngozi, meanwhile, saw Amina only as a burden. She often complained about her to neighbors, saying the girl was slow or weak, though everyone knew how much Amina worked. Her own children, Chika and Ifyananya, copied her behavior. They ordered Amina around, asking her to polish their shoes or bring them water, while they sat and played. Amina did everything without protest, but deep inside, her heart ached for the love she never received. There were nights when she cried silently into her pillow, careful not to make a sound. She wished she could speak to her father one more time, to ask him why he left her behind in such a cruel world. But each morning she wiped her tears, stood up, and faced another day with courage. In the midst of her suffering, there was something special about Amina that no one could take away: her kindness. She never shouted at anyone, never spoke harsh words, and never refused to help. Even when her stepmother treated her unfairly, Amina still fetched water for her without complaint. Even when her step-siblings mocked her, she still shared her little piece of food with them if they asked. People in the village began to notice this quiet strength. An old woman who lived nearby once said, "That child has a pure heart. She suffers, but she never lets bitterness grow inside her." Those words gave Amina courage, though she never said them aloud. Her days were long and her nights were lonely, but deep in her heart, she believed that life could not always remain the same. She had seen how seasons changed. The rains replaced the dry harmattan winds, and flowers bloomed after the harsh sun. She thought, if nature can change, maybe my life can change too. And so, Amina continued to endure, working hard each day and holding on to her secret dream of a brighter tomorrow. Though her stepmother showed her no love, and though her world seemed full of sorrow, Amina's spirit refused to break. She did not know when or how, but she trusted that one day her story would take a new turn. Her hope was like a candle in the dark, small but steady, guiding her heart through the loneliness she faced. For Amina, every new day was another chance to survive, another chance to dream, and another chance to believe that her life would one day be more than chores, scraps, and silence. The morning came bright and full of noise. Birds chirped in the mango trees, but the compound was louder than usual. Ngozi was moving about quickly, shouting instructions and laughing with her children, Chika and Ifeanyi. Bags were being carried out of the house, boxes tied up and perfumes filled the air. Amina stood by the doorway, wiping her hands on her faded wrapper after sweeping the yard. She watched in silence, her eyes wide with curiosity. Ngozi was dressed in a beautiful lace gown, her face shining with excitement. Chika and Ifeanyi jumped around in new clothes, holding snacks and toys. The car outside was already waiting, its boot open for their luggage. Amina's heart beat fast. She had never seen such a preparation before. She thought perhaps for once she too would be part of something big, something joyful. When she asked softly, "Stepmother, are we going somewhere?" Ngozi stopped and looked at her with a smirk. "We," she repeated with a laugh. "We are going to Ghana for vacation. But you," she pointed a sharp finger at Amina, "you will stay here and watch the house. Someone has to keep things in order." At those words Amina's face fell. She felt her chest grow tight and tears welled in her eyes. The thought of traveling had filled her with hope for a brief moment, but it was quickly crushed. Ngozi's children giggled and whispered to each other, mocking Amina's sad face. "Vacation is not for maids," Ifeanyi said cruelly, tugging at her new bracelet. Ngozi adjusted her head tie and continued, "Make sure you sweep the house every morning. Don't touch anything that doesn't belong to you. And remember, if anything goes wrong, you will answer to me when I return." The driver started loading the last bag into the car. Ngozi hugged her children and helped them climb in. Amina stood still, her tears finally rolling down her cheeks. She whispered, But what about me?" Her voice cracked like a broken shell. Ngozi looked at her without pity and said, "You are here to serve, Amina. Don't forget your place." With that, she slammed the car door and the engine roared to life. Amina stood at the gate, barefoot, her hands trembling as she watched the car drive away. The dust rose behind it, stinging her eyes, but it wasn't the dust that hurt, it was the emptiness she felt inside. Her family had left her behind without care, like a forgotten object. The sound of their laughter faded with the distance, leaving only silence. For a long moment she remained at the gate, staring at the empty road. The world seemed too big, too quiet. She hugged herself, wiping away the tears that streamed down her cheeks. "Why do they always leave me behind?" she whispered. When she turned back into the compound, everything looked different. The chairs were empty, the children's voices gone, and even the walls felt cold. She walked through the house, touching the furniture as though it would give her comfort. But the silence was heavy, pressing down on her small shoulders. Still, she refused to let despair crush her completely. Amina had learned to survive loneliness. She cleaned the kitchen, swept the living room, and cooked a small meal for herself. She prayed before eating, thanking God even though her heart was heavy. She whispered, "Maybe one day things will change. Maybe one day I will not always be the one left behind." At night, when she lay on her mat, the house felt too big. The wind whistled through the windows and she hugged herself tighter. She remembered how her father once promised to take her on trips. One day, he had said, "You will see the world beyond this village." But now her father was gone, and her stepmother's words cut her deeper than any wound. Yet, in the middle of her sorrow, Amina found a spark of courage. She stood by the window and looked at the sky. The stars shone brightly, scattered like diamonds across the black night. She whispered to herself, "If the stars can shine in darkness, maybe I can too. Maybe I am not as forgotten as I feel." Days passed slowly. Amina woke up each morning, swept the compound and watered the plants. She carried out every chore as though Ngozi were watching her. She cooked small meals, washed her clothes, and sometimes sat by the gate to watch neighbors pass. Though lonely, she kept herself busy, refusing to break down completely. Some neighbors noticed her solitude. An elderly woman, Mama Grace, stopped one afternoon and asked, "Amina, are you here alone?" "Yes, Ma," Amina replied softly. "Where is your family?" the old woman asked, frowning. "They traveled," Amina said, forcing a small smile. Mama Grace shook her head and muttered, Poor child. May God see you through." Her words, though brief, warmed Amina's heart. At least someone noticed her existence. As the days stretched on, she began to sing while working. The songs were quiet and gentle, songs her late mother had once sung to her. The melodies filled the empty house, wrapping her in a sense of peace. For a little while she forgot she was abandoned. Still, whenever she thought about her stepmother and siblings enjoying their vacation in Ghana, eating delicious meals, staying in hotels and laughing together, her heart grew heavy again. She wondered why her life was so different, why she was always left out. But then she reminded herself, even if they leave me behind, I still have my dignity. I still have hope. In the silence of that lonely vacation, Amina discovered something important. She learned how strong she really was. She realized that even when left alone, she could survive. She could cook, clean, and protect the house without anyone's help. And though her heart longed for love, she knew she carried a quiet strength inside her that no one could take away. And so, while Ngozi and her children enjoyed their holiday in Ghana, Amina stayed behind, alone but unbroken. She chose to hold on to faith, to whisper her dreams into the night sky, and to believe that one day her life would not always be filled with loneliness and tears. The days passed slowly, and the silence of the house weighed heavily on Amina's young heart. Morning after morning she woke up before the sun, swept the compound and fetched water from the well. The bucket was heavy and her thin arms ached, but she pushed through without complaint. She cooked little meals for herself, sometimes just plain rice with no stew, other times only gari with water. Still, she was grateful, whispering prayers of thanks before eating, even if her stomach was not fully satisfied. The weeks stretched on and the loneliness became harder to bear. The laughter of Ngozi's children no longer filled the house, the sound of chatter was gone, and the big compound felt empty. Amina filled the silence with soft songs, her voice trembling but steady, as if singing could protect her from despair. One evening the sky grew dark with thick clouds, and the air was heavy with the smell of rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and soon the rain poured down in heavy sheets. Amina rushed outside barefoot, running to the clothesline to gather the few clothes she had washed earlier in the day. The rain soaked her dress as she hurriedly pulled the garments from the line, her hair clinging to her face. As she struggled, a man from the neighboring compound stood under his veranda, watching. His name was Chinedu, a tall man with kind eyes and a calm voice. He noticed the little girl running about in the storm, her body shaking from the cold. Concern filled his heart and he stepped closer to the fence. "Amina," he called softly. Startled, she turned, clutching the wet clothes against her chest. "Good evening, sir," she replied politely. Her voice was small, almost drowned out by the rain. "Why are you always alone in that house?" he asked, his brows furrowing. "I see you sweeping, cooking, even carrying heavy buckets. Where is your family?" At first, Amina looked down at the ground, unsure if she should answer. She had always been taught not to speak badly of elders, even if they mistreated her. But something in Chinedu's gentle tone made her feel safe. The words slipped from her lips slowly, like water escaping a cracked pot. "My father, he passed away," she said, her voice breaking. "My stepmother lives here with me, but she traveled with her children. They left me behind to take care of the house." Chinedu's heart tightened. He had seen signs before, how Amina always seemed tired, how she never played like other children, how her clothes were often old and worn. But hearing it from her lips made him feel deep pity. "And you mean you have been here alone all this while?" he asked. Amina nodded. The rainwater dripped down her face, but it wasn't only the rain, her tears mixed with it. She clutched the bundle of clothes tighter, afraid her small story might trouble him. Chinedu sighed deeply. "Poor child," he whispered to himself. That night, after the rain stopped, Chinedu knocked gently on the compound gate. Amina opened it slowly, surprised to see him carrying a small basket. Inside was warm jollof rice with fried fish. "Here," he said softly. "Eat something good tonight." Amina's eyes widened. No one had ever shown her such kindness in a long time. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her hands trembling as she received the food. From that day Chinedu often looked out for her. Whenever he cooked, he sent her a small portion. Sometimes he gave her fruits from his garden or bread from the market. At first, Amina felt shy and even guilty for accepting his help, but slowly his kindness became like a candle in her darkness. Each time he gave her food, he also gave her words of encouragement. "You are stronger than you think, Amina," he told her. "Do not let the way others treat you make you forget your worth." Amina held on to those words like treasure. Whenever the loneliness became too heavy, she repeated them in her mind and they gave her courage. Still, life was not easy. The house was big and the chores were endless. The roof leaked when it rained, and Amina often had to place bowls and buckets under the dripping spots. At night, she lay awake listening to the sound of water dropping into the bowls, wondering if her stepmother would even care when she returned. But she endured. Her small frame carried heavy buckets, her thin hands scrubbed floors, and her tired eyes watched over the compound day after day. She worked like a servant, yet her heart refused to give in to bitterness. Sometimes she sat by the gate and watched other children walk home from school, their laughter filling the air. She wished she could join them, wished she had books and a uniform. But instead of crying, she whispered prayers, asking God to one day change her story. And through it all, Chinedu continued to check on her. He never intruded, but he always made sure she had enough to eat and that she was safe. His quiet compassion became the one steady light in her lonely world, reminding her that kindness still existed, even if her own stepmother had abandoned her. Though her struggles were many, Amina began to find strength in unexpected places. Each day she survived on little food, each day she worked hard to keep the house in order, she proved to herself that she was not weak. And with Chinedu's gentle support, she discovered that even in the darkest days, a small act of kindness could give her hope. The weeks slipped by slowly, each day like the one before, until finally the long-awaited day came. Ngozi returned. The sound of car tires crunching against the gravel outside the gate woke Amina from her nap. She rushed to her feet, her heart racing. For weeks she had been alone in the house, surviving on little food, her only comfort being Chinedu's kindness. Now the stepmother who had abandoned her was back, her laughter echoing even before she entered the compound. Ngozi stepped out of the car dressed in bright new clothes, her hair styled beautifully. Her children ran behind her, each holding small bags filled with gifts. Their faces glowed with joy as they boasted about their trip. They spoke of the hotels, the beaches, the food, and the fun they had enjoyed in Ghana. Amina stood quietly by the corner, her eyes lowered. She had no new clothes, no stories to tell, only the memory of long lonely nights. As they entered the house, Ngozi suddenly stopped. Her eyes widened at the sight before her. There, in the sitting room, sat Chinedu, the neighbor she had seen many times but never truly spoken to. He was seated on a wooden chair beside Amina, and between them was a tray of rice and beans. Amina was smiling, her small hands clutching a spoon as she ate with quiet joy. For a moment, silence filled the room. The noise of laughter from Ngozi's children faded, and the weight of the scene pressed against her chest. Ngozi's face hardened as pride rose inside her. She placed her bag on the table and cleared her throat loudly. "What is this?" she asked sharply. "Chinedu, why are you sitting in my house? And why is this girl sitting as though she is your equal?" Chinedu stood up slowly, his tall frame commanding respect. He looked at Ngozi calmly, his voice firm yet steady. "Ngozi, I came here because I could no longer watch in silence. You left this child alone for weeks while you enjoyed yourself. She had little food, no care, and no love. What kind of woman abandons a girl like this?" Ngozi's lips tightened, and her eyes darted toward Amina, who looked down nervously. The children stood frozen, sensing the tension in the air. "This is my house," Ngozi said coldly. "I can raise her how I choose. She is not my blood." Chinedu shook his head, disappointment written across his face. "That excuse is weak, Ngozi. Blood is not the only reason to care for someone. This girl deserves to be treated with kindness. She deserves food, love, and the joy every child needs. Instead, you gave her nothing but pain. Do you not see how wrong that is?" The room grew heavy with silence again. Ngozi's pride pricked her like thorns, but deep in her heart, shame began to stir. She remembered the nights before her journey when Amina worked tirelessly in the kitchen, scrubbing, washing, and carrying heavy buckets while her own children played freely. She remembered the way Amina's eyes always looked sad, though she never complained. Still, Ngozi swallowed her feelings and refused to admit fault. "I do not need a neighbor telling me how to raise a child," she snapped. "You should stay out of what does not concern you." But Chinedu did not move. His voice grew stronger, carrying a tone that could not be ignored. "It does concern me, Ngozi, because I am human. Because no one deserves to live the way Amina has been living. I saw her carrying buckets too heavy for her. I saw her hungry, sitting alone in the rain. And I saw her smile disappear each day you left her behind. You call her nothing, but she is a child with a heart. And she has shown me more strength and grace than I have seen in many adults." Amina looked up at him, her eyes wide with gratitude. His words were like a shield, protecting her from years of silence. For the first time, someone spoke for her. Someone stood boldly against the cruelty she had endured. Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to hold them back. Ngozi felt the sting of truth in his words. Her children shifted uncomfortably, their eyes moving between their mother and Amina. Deep inside, a part of them understood what Chinedu said. They had laughed and played while Amina worked endlessly. They had eaten full meals while she was given scraps. But now, in front of Chinedu's steady gaze, it all looked different. Ngozi wanted to defend herself further, but the words stuck in her throat. She felt trapped between her pride and the truth that was now clear for all to see. Her face burned with shame, but she crossed her arms and remained silent. Chinedu turned back to Amina, his expression softening. "Do not be afraid," he told her gently. "You are not alone anymore. You are valuable, Amina. Never forget that." Amina's heart swelled with warmth. In that moment she felt seen. She felt loved, not by blood, not by riches, but by kindness. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Thank you, sir." Ngozi said nothing more that evening. She walked into her room with her children, her pride forcing her to keep quiet, but her mind heavy with guilt. She could not erase the truth she had heard. She could not erase the image of her stepdaughter sitting happily with Chinedu, eating food with peace in her eyes. That night, as Amina lay on her small mat, she whispered another prayer. Her heart was full of gratitude, not because her struggles were over, but because she finally knew she was not invisible. Someone cared. Someone believed she deserved more than pain. And as the moonlight slipped through the window, Amina held onto that truth tightly, knowing that her story was beginning to change. Not long after the day Chinedu stood up for Amina, word spread across the neighborhood. People began whispering about what had happened inside Ngozi's compound. At first, Ngozi pretended not to care, but she noticed how the neighbors looked at her differently. The smiles they once gave her had turned into quiet frowns. Some women in the market stopped greeting her, and the men in the street shook their heads when they saw her pass. Chinedu could not bear to watch Amina suffer any longer. He walked to the meeting place of the elders, men and women who guided the community with wisdom. He told them everything, how Amina had been abandoned, how she had been left alone without food, and how she had struggled while her stepmother enjoyed a vacation with her children. The elders listened carefully, their faces heavy with disapproval. "This is not the way of our people," one of the elders, Baba Musa, said firmly. "A child without parents should be cared for, not treated like a servant." They sent for Ngozi, and though she tried to resist, she could not refuse the call of the elders. She dressed in her best wrapper and tied her headscarf tightly, but her heart beat fast as she entered the gathering. The whole community had gathered, eager to hear what would happen. Amina sat quietly in a corner, her small hands folded in her lap. When Ngozi arrived, the elders wasted no time. "Ngozi," Baba Musa said, "we have heard of your behavior toward this child. You left her hungry and alone while you traveled. You treated her like nothing, though she is the daughter of your late husband. Is this the way a mother should behave?" Ngozi shifted uncomfortably. Her pride made her want to argue, but the eyes of the people pierced her like sharp arrows. She knew if she denied the truth, the neighbors would speak against her. If she admitted it, shame would cover her name. "She is not my daughter," Ngozi said weakly. "I did what I thought was right." The crowd murmured in disapproval, and the elders shook their heads. "Whether she is your daughter or not, she is a child under your care," another elder said. "Our people do not abandon children. We protect them. If you continue this wickedness, we will remove the girl from your house and place her where she will be loved." Fear filled Ngozi's heart. She could not bear to be disgraced publicly. Her business in the market would suffer, her children would be mocked, and her name would be stained. She bowed her head and quickly agreed. "I will change. From now on, I will treat Amina well." The elders nodded, though they could see the pride still resting in her heart. They did not fully trust her, but they knew their warning would protect the girl. From that day, Amina's life began to change. She was no longer left hungry. Food was placed before her, and though it was sometimes smaller than what the others received, it was still better than before. Ngozi enrolled her in school not out of love, but out of fear of the elders' eyes watching her. For the first time, Amina held books in her hands, her fingers trembling as she opened the pages. She loved the smell of the paper, the feel of the pen, and the sound of her teacher's voice guiding her. Each morning, she wore her simple uniform and carried her small bag proudly. Though her clothes were not as fine as those of Ngozi's children, her smile shone brighter than theirs. She sat in class, listening carefully, writing slowly, and learning with determination. Other children began to notice her kindness and her intelligence. Soon she had friends who played with her during breaks, sharing food and laughter. At home, things were not perfect. Ngozi's love never truly grew. She treated her own children with more care and sometimes reminded Amina that she was not part of her blood. But Amina had learned something greater. Love does not always come from where it should. Sometimes it comes from the hearts of strangers, neighbors, and friends who see your worth. Chinedu often checked on her. He would bring small notebooks or pencils and encourage her to study hard. "Your future is bright, Amina," he told her often. "Do not let anyone make you believe you are less than what you are. You are strong. You are worthy." Those words stayed with her like seeds planted in her heart. She watered them with her hard work and her prayers each night. Slowly, Amina grew in confidence. Her voice, once soft and hidden, became stronger. Her steps, once timid, became steady. Years passed, and she grew into a young woman who carried herself with dignity. She was not the broken girl who cried alone in the rain anymore. She was a student, a dreamer, and a survivor. People in the community admired her resilience. When young girls faced hardship, their mothers often said, "Look at Amina. She suffered but she rose. You too must be strong." Ngozi, though still proud, could not ignore the change. The girl she once looked down upon had earned respect that even her own children did not have. Neighbors greeted Amina warmly, praising her for her strength and kindness. Some even whispered that she would go far, that her future would shine brighter than gold. At night, Amina sometimes sat outside under the moonlight, remembering her father. She wished he could see her, standing tall despite everything. She wished he could know that the daughter he left behind had not been crushed by cruelty. And though her stepmother's love was never real, Amina felt the warmth of the community around her. She knew her story was proof that pain does not last forever. Hope can grow in the darkest soil, and light can shine even in the shadow of cruelty. When she was asked one day by a younger girl how she managed to survive, she smiled softly and said, "Even when you are treated unfairly, do not give up. Do not lose your faith. There are people who will see your worth. And one day you will rise." And so, Amina's life moved forward, not perfect but filled with dignity, strength, and hope. She had proven that even in pain, hope could rise and shine like the morning sun.